Okay, let's get started. So, hey guys, first things first, welcome to this user group meeting. I'd like to thank Christian, of course, for setting this up with me. This is going to be a preparation for the CSWA exam. More or less, we're going to know about what the exam is and stuff like that. And none of this would have been possible without Krishna from Chennai SWUG. So a big shout out to him. And just a real quick intro to who I am, why am I talking to you today. So I was a SolidWorks user for a couple of years now, a bit like over 6 years. And throughout those years, I've worked on tons of projects, and I also got to take a couple of exams. The most notable one was the CSWE, the Certified SolidWorks Expert exam. I took like 2 years ago. And ever since then, I started working deeply with multiple SolidWorks user communities all over the world and user groups to share my tips and tricks regarding the exams and regarding other things as well. Enough of me, let's talk about what we're here to talk about, which is the CSWA. So we're going to start about talking about what the CSWA is, what that even means, and after that, we're going to start focusing on what the things you should take into consideration while you're taking that exam or while you're preparing yourself for that exam. After that, we're going to talk about some tips and tricks, the things you should take in mind while you're sitting for the exam. And at the very end, we're going to share some resources that I found useful. Most of them, if not all of them, are going to be free resources, because I know most of you are for that. And I mean, most resources out there are pretty good. And I've always tested any resource I share. So you've got my validation. And we're also going to talk about the tester, which is the software we take the exam on. We're going to have a hands-on review of that as well. And at the very end, we're going to have an open mic session for Q&A if anyone has any questions for me. So without further ado, let's get started with what the CSWA even is. So first things first, most of you might have heard the word CSWA, but mostly when we say that, we mean the CSWA-MD exam, which is the mechanical design exam. And that specifically means Certified SolidWorks Associate in Mechanical Design. So certified SolidWorks, so you're certified in SolidWorks software in the level of associate, because there are multiple levels. There's associate, professional, and expert. So you get to know the level, and the topic or the scope of that exam is mechanical design, because there's also multiple other exams in like simulation and other levels as well. So as I said, we've got like additive manufacturing. Another topic is like electrical design, and so on. So CSWA, mainly when we just say that, we refer to the CSWA mechanical design exam. And another thing you might have seen is that badge on the very right of the screen. You might have seen it like being shared around. That's the badge that you get when you pass the CSWA exam. So it's like a verification from SolidWorks that you're certified to a specific level, which is the associate level in a specific topic, which is the mechanical design topic. And that exam mainly is made for students and those who are just starting with software with a bit of experience. Mostly, let's say like from 6 to 9 months of experience, because as soon as you get more advanced in the software, there are higher levels of examinations to test your level at that point. And even though all of that sounds good, the main thing is, why should I take an exam? Because after all, exams aren't free. So you pay a fee to take the exam. And if it's not profitable for you, if you're not gonna get something out of it, most people won't even consider it. So the main thing is here to take into consideration is that this exam is from SolidWorks itself. So it's like a benchmark where you can see how proficient you are in the software, and not only in the software, but also in the industry knowledge, because most of these exams, if not all of them, don't only test the features inside of the software, but also test your knowledge of like CAD designing principles, or if, for example, if you're taking a specific exam in, let's say, sheet metal or something, so it also specifically tests your knowledge in that industry as well, in the sheet metal industry, and the nomenclature and stuff like that in that industry as well. So for a general exam like the CSWA in mechanical design, you're mostly focused on the tools inside of SolidWorks that help you in making a mechanical design, and as well as the main rules and guidelines that you should follow while you're making such a design or working on a project. And as I said, the main thing for you is that as soon as you pass that exam, you know and you tell others that I'm certified at a specific level, which is the associate level in this field. And that's a way to set you apart from other users as well. And what that really means at the very end is that you now get a better chance to present yourself, whether you're still a student and applying for an internship, or you're graduated and you're now applying for a job. It's like an easy way to filter people based on their level of experience, whether it's in the software or on hands-on projects as well. So that's all good, but now let's talk about specifics. So what does the exam actually talk about? And if you go to the main page on the SOLIDWORKS website, to see about the CSWA, and we can scroll down a bit, you're gonna find a bit more details about the exam, like its duration, how many questions is it, the passing score, stuff like that. But the main thing we're gonna focus on here is that here's the button to download the sample exam. Remember this because we're gonna get back to it at the very end of the session. So remember that there's an option here to download the sample exam. Anyways, if you scroll down a bit more, you can now get to the main thing that I want to talk about, which is about the exam part. Here's where it tells you what commands and features in the software this exam is going to test you at. So don't try to take the exam if you're not knowledgeable in these topics. And most importantly, you don't take an exam with only like theoretical knowledge. You must have hands-on practical knowledge as well, because this isn't an exam where it's going to just ask you questions about the software without you having the software open in front of you. You must have it open and start working on designs and answering questions based on that. And it's going to test you in the software based on your knowledge in these specific commands and features. So make sure before you take any exam, not just the CSWA, but any exam from SOLIDWORKS, go to the main web page for certifications. It's like solidworks.com/certification, and find the exam that you want to take. In this case, the CSWA mechanical design. Go to the exam info web page, and you're going to find more details about what to expect in that exam. So let's say, for example, I find that here it talks about sketch entities and tools, and then it talks about main features like boss features and cut features, fillets and chamfers, some patterns as well. And then it starts talking about like assembly mates and even drawing views and kind of stuff like that. So if I'm using the software, but I've never used assemblies, or for example, or I don't have that much knowledge in drawing views and the differences between them, then that's something I should work on before attempting to take the exam. Okay, the next thing is we're going to talk about every part of the exam and like focus on what that part of the exam is going to test for you and what you should expect from that part in the exam. And the first thing is part modeling, because as I said, this is a hands-on exam, so you must have the software open in front of you and start modeling some stuff. And the first thing is questions. So here I'm talking about, you've got like 20, maybe 15 questions, or whatever the number is. You have access to all of those questions at the same time. So this is the interface that you can see on the right of the software, Tangex tester software, which you take the exam on. On the very left of the interface, you're going to find a place where there's going to be some text, a couple of paragraphs talking about that model, what you should do, things to take into consideration, and you must read those very carefully because there are many details in that part which might not be in the drawings that will be given to you in the exam. The drawings will be a couple of pictures or images that will be at the left part, at the right part of the interface, and at the bottom part you're gonna find the questions. So here you got the place where you enter the answers to the questions, either in MCQ, so multiple choice, or in another case it might be like a text box where you enter a specific value. And in both cases you must note that there's a margin of error in your answers. So in the CSWA it's 1%. So remember, 1% plus or minus for any number that you enter. But when we're talking about MCQ or multiple choices, make sure that you're always choosing the nearest thing to your number. And maybe even nearest is a bit far off because we're building on that part as we go throughout the exam. So make sure that your number is put on the same as the choice that you get, because if there's a slight difference, for example, like a decimal place or something like that, that might not be an indicator right now, and you still might choose the nearest option. But moving on, when you go to the next part of the exam where you're going to edit your model and so on, you're building on the previous work that you did. So if the previous work isn't correct, then what's coming up is not going to be correct as well, and that margin is going to get bigger and bigger in your model. The next thing is you've got access, as I said, to all the questions at the same time, so you can get to the next question before answering the previous question and so on. So I usually tell people to take a quick look throughout the whole exam, just check what the questions look like and what they're going to ask you about, because that's going to help you a lot in identifying what the exam is going to ask you to do in that part. So whether you're going to edit it or remove something at the very end, or maybe add something later on. And based on that, you're going to choose the best course of action or the best way to create your own model. And the last thing I'm going to talk about in the interface is at the very bottom, you're going to find the time bar, or like a timer, which tells you how long you have left. So this exam is 3 hours. And that's like plenty much time for you to go through the 14 questions in this exam. But mainly, you might take some time on one question and like forget about the time running by. So you must have a look every now and then on that time, but just to have like a sense of how much time you've got left and stuff like that. Now let's get into specifics of the exam. So, okay, I went through the questions. I now have a broad idea what the exam wants me to do. And I know maybe I'm going to make the model in this way. The next thing is to go ahead and start checking the units. So as I said, you're going to find details about the question in the part on the very left, where it's going to be like a couple of paragraphs, like a description of the model you're going to make. And in that, you're going to find details like the mass properties of that exam of that model. So what material is going to be and stuff like that. And the main thing is the units. So make sure the first thing you do is set your units in your new file to the exact same units that the exam wants, because that's something that many people forget about, or just don't take much time in looking at it and just get into the model as at the very first thing. And it's like probably something you might not notice until the very end. And in that case, you're probably going to use like the scale feature to scale your model to the correct unit or something like that. And that's not really something easy to do when you're working with a parametric model. It's like a bit of a hassle. So that's something you must take into consideration. The next thing is preparing the model by creating variables. So not all dimensions will be given to you as discrete values in the drawing views. Sometimes you might find a dimension labeled as A or B or X or Y and Z and stuff like that. And in the part on the right, on the left, where you get a description of the question, you're going to find where it tells you that, for example, the variable A equals like 20 millimeters, the variable B equals like A plus 2 or something like that. And what you have to do right now is not do a conversion in your head and use those variables as discrete values. What you should do is add those variables into equations or as variables into the software, and then use them into equations in your part, because most of the time you're going to use those variables later on in the exam by changing their values, and it's going to be way easier to change everything just from the global equations, instead of going into every model or every feature or every sketch and editing that by hand. So the next thing is sketches, because as you know, every part is based off features and every feature is based off sketch, most features. And the first thing you have to notice is, after you've done your sketch and you've finished, is it fully defined or is it still underdefined? And the easiest way to check that is if you look at the very bottom right corner of the interface of SolidWorks, you're going to find a note saying it's underdefined or fully defined. If it's overdefined, then you've got something wrong and you must you're gonna get a warning of that, so that's obviously going to be shown. But underdefined sketches might not be that obvious, so you make a good notice of that, because that means that there's something that's missing in your sketch. Because most of the time, if not always, the sketches that you're required to do are fully defined and are expected to be fully defined, because all the dimensions and all the relations that you should add will be given to you in the exam. So if you still have an underdefined sketch, that might indicate that that's something missing, whether it's like a missing dimension or a missing relation that you didn't add, and that might affect how the model looks at the very end. And there's another way, of course, which is by looking at the feature manager tree on the left side of your interface. And if you find before the sketch name like two parentheses with a minus sign between them, that also means that it's an underdefined sketch. But if that's not present, like sketch 1, for example, you don't see that before of it. So you know that in that case, it's a fully defined model or fully defined sketch, and you can move on to the next step. So make sure you check that as well. So we've done the sketches, we checked everything is perfect, we got all the dimensions we need. Now let's talk about features. And here I want you to like take your back, rest it, and take a deep breath. And now let's think about the course of action, because as I said, we went through the whole questions in the exam, and we saw what are expected of us, and we've already created the main basis of our model, which is the sketches. And now we should think which features are the best to use right now that are going to help me moving forward, whether it's the best feature because it's the fastest or quickest, or it's the best feature because it's the easiest to edit later on. You're the one who saw the questions, so you're the one who's going to figure out which is the best course of action. And as an example, I've got here in SOLIDWORKS 4 identical parts. So all of these are cylinders, as you can see, and all of them have the exact same dimensions, but every single one of these 4 was created in a very different way. And let's just check the feature manager tree to see that. And as you can see, the first one is a boss extrusion, the second one was a revolve, the third was a sweep, and the fourth was a loft. All of them at the very end have the same mass, the same volume, the same surface area, and so on. But the main difference is the time it took me to create every one of them, the time it took me to transfer the dimensions that were given to me in the drawing to other dimensions. So for example, if I was given a diameter, and now I'm working with a revolve, so I've got to divide that by 2 to make a radius, for example, or I might add dimension as a full diameter in my sketch if that's something I want to do. So all of this processing must go on inside of your mind while you're going through the model, and this is the best place to take a deep breath and start thinking of the best feature to use in that case. And another thing that is going to help you think of that as well is if you look at a model like this, for example, remember there's not one perfect solution or like one size fits all solution that's going to work. So this model, for example, given those dimensions, it's going to end up with a fully defined model, of course, but the way you create that model may differ from one person to another. One might create this in like 4 or 5 features, another one might do it like in 3 features and be very feature efficient. So you might combine a couple of features into one, like with a more complicated sketch, for example, or you can go like full turbo mode and create something like this. So in this case, it's going to load in just a second. As you can see, this model was only created in 2 features. Of course, that is a bit more excessive because now you're going to take more time thinking of how to reduce the number of features instead of how to make a robust model. But that's just an example of the different ways you can use to go about and create the same exact model. So always keep that into consideration. What's the best course of action? Is it the quickest? Is it the most editable way? Is it the one that relies mostly on the dimensions that were given to me as they are without the need of making any other calculations? You're the one who's going to see the questions in the exam, so you're the one who must decide which to use, and that decision is going to be based on your knowledge of each command and your experience using it as well. So now we've finished the first part of the exam. We've created a model, and usually you're going to be asked about like the mass or something, and whatever it is that it's the software or the exam is asking you about, the first is going to always be a multiple choice question. So at least you have like an assurance that you're working like as expected and what you're doing is on the right path. If not, if your answer is not one of the 4 choices that you're given, then you must go back and tweak your model and check if everything is right. Maybe you've got the units wrong, or maybe you've got like a dimension wrong, or maybe you forgot like a decimal point or something like that. Go back and check your model, make sure everything is right. As soon as everything is right and you check your answer and it is indeed one of the choices that you're given, you can move on to the next part of the exam, which is part modification. So we've already created a part. Now it's going to ask you to do one of two things. You're either going to edit some of the dimensions in the model, and here you're going to make use of the variables that you added at the very beginning. So if you remember, while you're creating the model, the first thing I told you guys to do was to add any variables you get into the software. And if you've got an equation, for example, or something that's made up of multiple variables, so a plus b divided by 2 minus 25, or for example, doing this calculation in your mind or by hand and then inputting the resulting value into SOLIDWORKS might give you the correct answer, but editing a or b later on in the exam will mean that you have to go back and recalculate that by yourself. The easiest way, of course, is to add all of that to the software, and all you have to do right now is just change the value of a or b and so on, and all the dimensions will be all the affected dimensions will be rebuilt to the correct value as soon as possible. The other thing that you might be asked to do is to add or remove certain features. So for example, you might be asked to add certain holes or add fillets, remove some features, and so on. And this is all going to be either based on the things that you used or the features that you used to create your model, or adding new features that will affect the new look of your model. So you might need to suppress a certain feature, for example, to remove a certain thing and add a new feature to create something else. All of that is going to be based on the questions that you have, and all of that, as I said, is going to be based on the way you created the model in the first place. So that's why I'm focusing on making sure you have an overview of not just what the exam wants me to model, but also what it wants me to change in that model later on, and take that into consideration as well. Now we're going to talk about the next part in the exam, which is assemblies. So you made your model and you edited it a couple of times and you got that part done. You might have a couple of more models, maybe one or two models to create and edit. But the thing after that is to create an assembly. Usually you are given the parts, so you're not required to create the parts, then use them as components in your assembly. You get a part, a group of parts to download from the software while you're in the exam, and those parts are the parts that you're going to use in your assembly. And the first thing we're going to talk about is the origin, because this is the thing that is the reference of your model. Because let's think of this. If the exam, for example, asked me about the center of mass, for example, or anything like that, that requires the position or the XYZ position of certain components, if my reference is different than the reference that the software is thinking I'm using, then my values, even they are correct, but they're not referencing the same thing as the exam. So in that case, there's going to be a mismatch, and my answers are obviously not going to be correct. So make sure you position the models correctly, and most of the time when you just insert a new part, it's going to be fixed, so you must make it unfixed, or like float the model. You can right click on it and then float the first component and position it where it needs to be, because as I said, in the exam, in the question, you get a description of everything, and the images, they show you everything you need to know. So in the description or in the images, there will be a way, an indicator to tell you where the origin of the assembly must be. And in that case, you have to make sure that you align your assembly with what the question asks you to do. All right. And another thing that comes in handy is if you've got the origin of one of your components is the same origin of the assembly, not on a different face or on a different edge or something. So in that case, you can make use of the align axes option, or the align axis checkbox in the coincident mate. And that option is viewed for you if you make a mate between two origins of the assembly and of a component. For example, in that case, when you align axes, all it does is just makes the front plane of your component the same front plane of your assembly, the right plane of your component the same right plane of the assembly, and the same goes for the top plane as well. The next thing is, after you've place all your components is to add mates. And here we're only talking about standard mates. We're not going to talk about advanced mates or mechanical mates. Those are out of the scope of this exam, because if you go back to the list of topics that the exam is going to test you at, that I mentioned on the website at the very beginning, if you go through that, you're not going to find any mention of advanced mates or mechanical mates. They're all going to be standard mates. So if while you're creating your assembly, you're not used to making something using standard mates and you did it using advanced mates, that's okay. But remember, there is a solution. There does exist a solution where you can only use standard mates without the need to use any other different type of mates. And besides, the standard mates are not that difficult to get a grasp of. I mean, most of them, like coincident, parallel, perpendicular, concentric, distance mates, angle mates, that kind of stuff, they're all pretty basic. So all you have to do is just think what type of mate is most suitable in this case, so that the end result is what you are expected to create. And this is going to be based on the next thing, which is movement. So usually when you make an assembly, you're not making an assembly of something that's rigid or still. It sometimes might have some movement to it, as in the example over here. And in the example you see on the screen on the right, all the mates in this component, or this assembly, were standard mates. There were no advanced mates at all, even though you can do it using some types of like mechanical mates or stuff like that. But this is an example of something that you can do using just standard mates. And what I'm focusing on right now is the thing that if you created the model and your overview or your initial view of that model is that it should move in a specific way, try to test that. All you have to do is just like grab a component and move it around with the cursor and see if the assembly at the very end, after you added all the mates, is moving as expected or not. If not, if, for example, a certain component is fixed, or a certain component moves irregularly, or like it is flipped or something like that, that will mostly be like an obvious thing to you if you're trying to move the assembly around rather than just looking at it from different angles. So that's a nice tip for you guys. It's obviously helped me a lot before, so I'm surely certain that it's going to help you as well. So now you got the assembly, you got the components, you inserted them, and you made sure that the origin is the origin where it should be as well, and you added the mates. They're all standard mates, so you know you're on the right path. You checked the movement and everything is perfect. Now what am I required to do in order to tell the exam that, hey, I created these models or these assemblies in a correct way? And the main thing here is that you're trying to extract some info from the software based on your designs, whether it's a part or assembly, and tell the software which you're taking the exam on, which is this tester, tell it, here's the info that you asked me about. And it's usually going to ask you about using two tools. So these tools will be found in the Evaluate tab in SolidWorks from the command manager. So if you've got that tab hidden or something, make sure you show it or go to the search bar and use these two features. The first one is the measure command, and the second one is mass properties. And a quick note, by the way, in the CSWA exam, there will be questions that won't require these two. So for example, when we're talking about questions about drawing views, for example, in the CSWA, it doesn't ask you to create drawing views. What it does is it asks you about the different types of drawing views out there. It might give you like an image of one of the drawing views and tell you what drawing view is this. And you tell it, oh, this is like a section view or a crop view or whatever it is. So in that case, it's just like a multiple choice question. It doesn't depend on extracting anything. It's just like a general question. But these questions will be testing your own knowledge in the mechanical design field or in the CAD field in general. So that's type of questions. But what I'm talking about here is questions that are based on the hands-on project or the hands-on component that you designed on the software. So let's start by talking about the measure tool. So this is what it most of the time looks like. Let's say here I've selected a face, so it start giving me some info about that face. So for example, its area, its perimeter. If I select, let's say an edge, for example, it might tell me the length. If I select multiple points, it might tell me like the distance between 2 points, whether it's the X distance, the Y distance, the shorter distance, and so on. So based on that, you must select exactly what it's asking you to do, and give that information to it. And a neat thing, by the way, is in certain versions of SolidWorks, there's also a copy option. So if you go with the mouse over and hover over the resulting dimension or value, you can just click on the copy option, and it's just going to copy it to your clipboard, just to make sure that you got the value correctly. Because most of the time, and I've heard about many people doing this, they get their correct value, but while they're typing it in the testing software, they might type it incorrectly. They might like miss a number or put the decimal point in the wrong place and stuff like that. So that's something you should always take into consideration. Another thing as well is the units. So not always, but sometimes I've met some people who have their units in the measure tool different than the units of the template or the part that they're working on. So you can also change the units inside of the measure tool as well, and you can change like the units themselves, the number of decimal places, and so on, because the exam, the questions in the exam will be asking you to get certain values, let's say like in 2 decimal places or like 3 decimal places, and so on. So you might also want to keep an eye on that. If you, let's say for example, I've got like 2 or 3 decimal places and it only needs like 1, or it might need 5, whatever it is, you can also change that from within the measure tool. All you have to do is just go over here and change that in the software. So now I've got most of the information extracted from my model. So if I've got any lengths, any angles, any surface areas, maybe even the perimeter or something like that, I can get it from here. So what else can it ask me about? It might ask you about stuff that are related to the mass of your model, and this is mainly dependent on the materials. But before I go there, the mass properties, even though it's like a wonderful tool, it's not as quick as the measure tool, because one thing the measure tool can do that the mass properties tool can't is give you like quick indicators in real time, as soon as possible, with certain values. So for example, if I like select 2 faces or like 2 edges, for example, and there's a certain angle between them, I can see that angle as soon as possible without needing to open the measure tool, just by taking a glance at the lower bottom right corner of my screen. I'm gonna get like the angle is XYZ, or let's say for example I selected an edge, so it's gonna tell me its length, for example, and stuff like that. So this is a quick way to know certain dimensions that you might need without needing to open the measure tool or like pin it to the side or stuff like that. So as I said, still, even though the measure tool is quick and easy to use and everything, it still doesn't have all the info the exam is going to ask you about. So the next thing is, as I said, the mass properties. And here, as I said, the main thing that you must focus on is have the correct material. So the exam in the description of the question is going to tell you, hey, here you must use this material, whether it's like an ABS plastic or some type of copper alloy or whatever it is, and make sure you choose the correct one, because it's going to affect everything coming forward, moving forward. Let's say if the density is incorrect, that means that the mass or the volume of your model is also not going to be as required in the exam. So that's some main thing to consider. As well as that, you can also make sure that you're using the right reference. So as I said, you must, at the very beginning of making any assembly, you must position the first component, or position the assembly in general, at a certain origin that it tells you in the questions in the exam. But sometimes in certain questions, it might tell you, for this specific question, I need the answers to be relative to another origin. Maybe not the origin of the assembly, maybe a coordinate system that you created throughout the exam. So that's also something that you must take into consideration, knowing how to switch from one coordinate system to another. That's also something that you must know how to do, because as I said, based on that, that's something that you might face in the exam as well. So now we got to know what kind of questions we should expect and what they focus on, and a couple of tips and tricks along the way. But I've always been mentioning the testing software. What is that? So now let's take a quick look on the tester itself and see how we can like start to use it. And if you go to this website, so it's like 3dexperience.virtualtester.com, I'm also going to send you the link in the chat in a couple of minutes. So if you go over here, you're going to find, let's just go to the home page first. So this is the page that you defined. I've already logged in, but if you haven't yet, you can log in with your account. And if you don't have an account, we can talk about that in a moment. So what you need to do right now is, just a sec, go over here at the very top right corner and download the software. So it's the virtual tester software, and make sure you download the latest version. So one time I had downloaded the software like a couple of months before, and I was taking the U exam, and it wasn't the latest update. So you can always download the latest version from the website over here. And what it's going to get you is this exe file. So let's run it real quick. And you're obviously going to read the license agreement and agree to it and install the software. It's a small software. It's a couple of megabytes. It's not that big. And you're going to get that folder, the Tangent Texter Pro client. I'm not going to run it right now because there's something I want to show you first, which is when you open that folder, forget about this subfolder here. It's about some library components for the exam. This is the exe file, which is the tester itself. So when you run this, you're going to get a new file created here, which is a log file that logs certain information, as you can see over here, for every session that you create. So don't worry about that. That just logs certain information about this session of the software. So if I exit this and run it once again, you're going to get a new log file and so on. So that's something that might come in handy. Let's say if you got a crash, for example, or if the internet connection was lost or something, you can get those log files, keep them, because you might be asked by the support team to send them over or something like that. Anyways, here we're going to start by choosing the language and stuff like that, and then we're going to log in. Or if we don't have an account, then you're going to sign up with an account. So remember, this and the website that we were just on a couple of moments ago, they are both linked to each other. So the account that you have here is the same account over there. If you made an account there, then you just log in over here. If you haven't, then you can create it here and log in over there. It's the same. Just one thing to note is this option down here, which is list an online directory of certified users. We're going to get back to that point in a moment, so just remember about this checkbox. Anyways, I've already got an account, so I'm just going to enter it real quick. And please don't look at my password. Anyways, I just logged in, and here, as you can see, I've got multiple brands of software to choose from, because this software, Tangent Texter Pro, is the exam software for multiple brands from the Dassault Systèmes. So like 3 ExperienceWorks, CSWA-MD, Tell Me, whatever. Here we're talking about SolidWorks, so I'm going to click on SolidWorks, and here you're going to get a list of some of the exams that you have available, or you might have not taken yet, or stuff like that. If you've got like a voucher, you can enter over here. If not, you can just select the exam that you want to take. And if you have credit, or if you've purchased the exam, or if it's open to you, instead of no credit, you should find here like a play button or a play symbol. And instead of no credit, it's going to tell you start exam, and you're just going to click on it and start the exam. It's going to give you a couple of information about the exam and just start the exam for you. If not, for example, here I haven't yet purchased this. So let's say I want to take these SolidWorks simulation from the professional level. I just have to click on buy credit over here. And open the web store, and it's going to get me to the store where I purchased a new exam. So as you can see over here, the CSWP simulation exam, its price. I enter my billing info over here, and that's it. And by the way, you can also change the value of the currency of the exam over here. So these 4 are the main 4 that are like the reference 4. So these have like fixed prices. So it's always going to be the same value, unless of course the price increase or anything. But all the other currencies are like transferred or like converted from these 4 main ones. All right. So when you finish, whether you take the exam or not, you're gonna finish here and exit. And as soon as you take an exam and you finish that exam, the result is going to be shown to you at the exact same moment. So there's no need to you to wait for anything to be mailed to you or anything. As soon as you finish, you get the result in real time. It's just like a window that pops up to you, tells you, yeah, you've like answered this number of questions. Out of this number of questions, those were right, those were wrong, those were unanswered. For example, you took this time of this number of minutes, for example, to solve the exam and stuff like that. And the main thing is that it tells you whether you passed or you unfortunately failed. Hopefully you all pass, but whatever it is, the results are also emailed to you at the same time. And this gets us to the next part, which is coming to this website, the certification center. So what you do over here, as I said, we can download the software from here, but that's not all. So you can check who are the latest certifications that were issued. So let's say Leroy over here from South Africa just got certified in the CSWA exam, which we're talking about right now. So congrats to him. You can come over here to your account and you have a list of your certifications. And let's say I want to check my let's see, where's my CSWA? Here it is. And here it is like an image of it. It's issued on this date. Here's the certificate ID that I can use if I want to verify it. So let's just copy that real quick. Right, and if I want to download my certificate from here, download the logos, as I showed you at the very beginning of the session, there were a couple of logos for this. You can add it to like a CV or a resume or just post it on social media. And you can also take this QR code and scan it, and it's going to give you like a web page where it tells you that this is a verified certification. So if you want to validate any certifications, you can also go over here. You just enter the certificate ID, enter this code, and just like that, it tells you, yes, this is a valid certificate taken on this date by Yahya T Khedr. It's a certificate of associate in mechanical design, and so on. So all of that is super cool. What else can you do? Well, you can get to the like this user directory. And here, as I said a couple of minutes ago, when you're creating your account, you're asked if you want to opt out or not from being shown in the user directory. So as you can see here, no, only users that have enabled the show in user directory option are shown here. So if you want people to be able to search for you or get to see your account and the exams you've passed, it's a great way to network with other people to be shown globally. So for example, let's say I want to see how many CSWAs are there. So like a bit over 500,000. By the way, like in the past like 3 days, there were like more, I believe 400 more CSWAs were taken. So that's a massive number. And here you can also see the country. So let's say India. So it tells me that the number of CSWAs from India are, let's see, and it's obviously going to get me a list, and it's going to be a massive list. So that's why it's taken a while, because I'm pretty sure. So 35,000 CSWAs in India, 18,000 of them are visible in the directory, and then the other like chose to opt out of the directory. But I can here like sort them by the first name, the number of certificates they get. So for example, this person, he has the CSWA, and this is of course the CSWA in mechanical design. You also have the CSWA in additive manufacturing, and so on. And let's say, for example, I wanted to check people in Egypt. So here I also get, so obviously we're not on par with India. Of course, we're still 200 SOLIDWORKS associates in Egypt. We're going to work on that number, of course. But let's say, for example, I go to Yahya T Khedr. This person seems like a reputable person. I can see, for example, here added his LinkedIn account, so I can network with him over here. You might see other people like with a YouTube account, YouTube channel, or maybe even like a Twitter account, a Facebook page. You can also add all of these information in your profile as well. So, for example, I want to say, I want a CSWE to work at my company, and he has to be an expert. I won't work with anyone who's less than that. So I'm just going to choose like an expert, and I want him to be in India. And just like that, so there's only 7,000 worldwide CSWEs. 620 are from India, and from here I can see, well, let's sort them, let's say by the city, for example. sending maybe, and let's see who, or like, no, let's make it sending and see who, if there's anyone from Chennai, for example. So yeah, as you can see, a couple of CSWEs from. So this person, he's already got his LinkedIn profile over here, so I can reach out to him. So, but the other people, I'm going to have to search for them and stuff like that, and it's not going to be that easy if you're not presenting yourself in a good way or in a good fashion, as you can see over here. So these are all different ways that you can use this certification center to your benefit, whether it's to present yourself in a better way, whether it's to download your certificates and so on. And as I said, I'm just going to post the link in the chat later on in the session. So let's get going. So now we've checked the exam, we've checked the topics the exam goes through. We've also checked the software that we test, we take the exam on, and so on. Now all that's being left is to prepare ourselves a bit better, and for that I've got some resources for you. So first thing is, these resources, as I said at the very beginning, they're all free resources and they've all been tested by me. So obviously there are tons of other resources out there, but these are the most notable ones. And I always focus on choosing free things. If I, in the future, come across anything that's worthy of being added to the list, I always update the list as new things are added. And I'm currently, by the way, also in the process of checking out a free course that if I find it useful, I'm also going to add it as well. Anyways, so the first resource that I always advise anyone to check, whether it's for exams or whether it's for just learning about the software, is the built-in tutorials. So what you do is you go to the help menu, or if you're using a newer version, I believe 2020 and above, you go to that question mark at the very right, and from that you go to tutorials. And here you've got a massive library of tutorials for the software, for everything that you might need, whether it's like learning about 3D sketches, learning about weldments, learning about animations, simulation, stuff like that. Plus, you've also got a collection of tutorials just for preparation to the CSWA and CSWP exams. So in that collection, you're going to find all the topics that are in those exams curated for you in one list that you can go through and the best thing about these built-in tutorials, the first thing, they're offline, so they're already on your device when you download the software, and you already have access to all the files that you're going to work on. So let's say, for example, you open a lesson on fillets, right? So there will be a part that you will apply what you learn throughout the lesson on, and you might need to create that part from scratch, or which is the best thing, just click on a link in the on the tutorial, and the model is just going to be opened in the software for you. No need to download anything, it's all offline. So it's free, it's offline, it's self-paced. There are tons and tons of merits for using these built-in tutorials, just to get you ahead from everyone else when it comes to learning more about the software. So this is the first place I go to. The next place is My SolidWorks. And if you don't know what My SolidWorks is, it is, let's say, it's the main resource for anything related to SolidWorks. All right. And the best thing is, this isn't a website that I or someone like me created. This is by SolidWorks itself. And all you have to do over here, so as you can see, your place for all things SolidWorks. Let's say, for example, I want to look for manuals, or I want to look for tutorials, or to look for CAD models, stuff like that. It can all be done from here. So let's say, for example, I want to look at CSWA content, and I'm going to say I want to look at trainings specifically. So I can look at CAD models, I can look at anything else. Let's go for trainings and hit search. And now it's going to get me all the training data on that website for the CSWA. And you've got like practice exams, you've got videos solving the sample exam for the part questions, or the sample exam for the assembly questions. You've got a couple of sketching practices, you've got some assembly practices, and so on. It's also got a full course with like a learning path that contains multiple lessons, video lessons of preparing you to the CSWA, and so on, and you can keep going on and on and on. And the best thing, if you go to the guest filter, so these are shown to you are all available for free without even needing to log in. So I can just like click over here and just start taking these lessons, right? Because as I said, these are for guests. I don't have to like pay for anything. Just create an account, log in, and get in, and you're ready to go. No need to purchase anything. And if you've got a higher level, so let's just remove that filter real quick. And let's say you've got a standard account or a professional account. You now have access to more kinds of data. So for example, what's in the standard level, let's see that. You've got some exercises, you've got more videos and stuff like that as well. The professional opens for you e-courses, full-fledged courses on the platform. And stuff like that. So you can always come for here to, let's say you don't want a self-paced tutorial on this software, you want like a video or something, you can always come here and check those out. The next thing is the official sample exam. So if you remember at the very beginning, I told you that you can download the sample exam from SOLIDWORKS itself. And yeah, that can be done on the website, and you're gonna get a PDF like this with a couple of files that you can check out. So here it is. It starts like a guide with the main info about the exam. So the different parts of the questions, number of questions, the number of points they give you, stuff like that. And then also it starts telling you how to download the software, how to run it, as you can see. And yeah, here, as you can see, it tells you, so no credit means, as I said, you don't have access to that exam. Start exam, that means that you have access and you can start taking it as soon as possible. There's also the sample exam, which is its icon, like it's a free exam, of course, because it's sample, and all it does is just it gives you an indication of what to expect in the real exam. So that sample exam on the software is the same exam that you're going to find in this PDF, but I personally prefer if you took it on Tanjix Tester, because you're going to get the same questions and the answers are the same and everything, but at least you're going to check the user interface of the tester and get to use it and get to create like an environment that is pretty much the same as the environment where you will be taking the real exam. So you've got multiple windows, for example, for the software and for the tester, and moving between them. You're gonna try everything out for you. You're going to make sure everything works all right, and you're gonna test that stress for the exam, for example, stuff like that. It's better to try it out with a sample exam, not just go ahead for the exam without checking this first. Plus, the sample exam, what it is made for is to give you an outline or like an overview of what to expect in the real exam in terms of the questions, the topics, and stuff like that. And a quick note or like a disclaimer is that the sample exam is obviously going to be a bit easier than the real exam. Like it's less in the number of questions, it's a bit less in the difficulty. But as I said, it's made as like a quick benchmark for you, just to know. So as you can see, here are the questions, and scrolling to the end, you're gonna find the answers to all of these questions, just to make sure that. So as you can see over here, here's the answer key, answers to every question you have. And as I said, every question is like here, for example, you've got a couple of images. It tells you where the origin for the assembly is, and you've got a couple of paragraphs telling you everything, whether it's the unit system, the decimal places, the variables or the global variables that you're going to need, the choices that you have, stuff like that. So make sure you go through that. And at the very end, you've got some tips and tricks that you can also check out as well. The next thing is practice problems, because who doesn't want to go through like 5 or 10 practice models to create, just to make sure that not only is he testing the sample exam, but also practice models. And that's also going to be a great way to ensure that you're on the right path. But it mainly goes back to where did these practice problems come from. So these over here are from SOLIDWORKS. As you can see, it's on the solidworks.com website, and I'm also going to send you this link in the chat in a moment. And from here, you can download a couple of practice models, so you get some drawings and stuff like that that you can create. They're more or less made for the CSWA exam, as you can see over here. So you're on the right path. You know that these are going to help you when you're taking the exam or when you're preparing to sit for the exam. And the last thing is journey to the SOLIDWORKS certifications that I made. So I believe Krishna was talking about that at the very beginning before we start the session. This is one installment of a series of articles that I made on LinkedIn, and I'm also going to share the link in the chat in a moment. So I've got like an article for every exam that I took in the mechanical design lineup. So the CSWA, the P, all the PA exams, and the CSWE exam. And in every article here, you're going to find like part modeling and stuff, what to expect, some tips for you, and part modification, what you should expect, and some tips going on, stuff like that. And then you've got some resources, obviously as taught by the built-in tutorials, and a couple of links to the sample exercise, the learning paths, taking the sample exam, and so on. And I update this this article every now and then with new things to check out as well. So and if you go at the very end, you're going to find multiple other articles for different exams that I've taken as well. So these are the main things. And if there's also anyone here in the session that comes from like an Arab speaking country, you can scan this QR code at the bottom right corner for a version of this session that I made, but in Arabic, that I made with a user group from Saudi Arabia last week. So that might also come in handy for you guys. Anyways, now I've finished my session. And now it's an open mic session, so I'm going to check the chat if we've got any questions. I'm going to go through them. And the main thing is, if you don't get to ask me your questions today, or if you get questions later on, all you have to do is just scan this QR code. So grab a quick screenshot or something and reach out to me on LinkedIn. I've got an open profile, so anyone can send me a message, even if they're not connected to me. And make sure you just tell me that you were with me today in this session, and give me your question, and I'll do my best to answer you as soon as possible. So the first thing, I'm just going to send the links in the chat. So the first link is the link for the 3D Experience Certification Center. And then you have the link of the website that I showed at the very beginning, which has all the details about the SOLIDWORKS CSWA exam. Followed by that is the link to the practice problems. And of course, at the very end, you've got the link to my article. So I don't see any questions in the chat, but if anyone has any questions for me, feel free to unmute yourself and tell us, or send them in the chat right now, and I'm also going to take a look at them.
Yeah, in the chat, like for the initial tip, I think you forgot to mention that material. So some people will be mentioning about the material, like initially they will be assigning the material, and some will be like doing the process after completing everything. So I think you have mentioned that way.
Yeah, so when it comes to the material, it doesn't really matter when you add it. It just matters that you add it before you take or you extract information of your model, because it doesn't change anything in the geometry of the model itself. So whether you change you set the material at the very beginning or at the very end, it's not going to make a difference. But you just have to add the correct material. Some people have templates that are ready with the materials. So all they have to do is just choose a template, and that template is already set with the correct units and the correct materials. So they've created beforehand. If you want, you can do that. If you want, you can do as I do and just do it on the go. So the first thing I do whenever I open any new file for an exam, I set the units to the units they need, whether it's like millimeters and seconds and stuff like that, or maybe it's like a kilogram and pound, whatever it is, I get that set for him. As I also check the materials and add that. But if I forget, I'm going to add it at the very end. But the main thing is going and adding all the global equations, whether it's like variables or equations based on different variables that you have. Those are the things that I usually do at first. If I remember, I do add the material at the beginning. If I don't, I add it at the very end. But it doesn't really change anything, as I said. But when it comes to units, for example, no, it does make a difference if you change the units at the very end, because what software does is that if you said like 10 millimeters and later on you change the units to inches, it doesn't convert the 10 millimeters to inches. It changes the unit, so it becomes 10 inches. So that's like a completely different dimension. So in that case, as I said, you might need to either like use a macro, something to edit all the dimensions at once, or use the scale feature, scale command to scale down your model. But the issue is now your model isn't really that parametric, because if you edit any dimension before the scale command, you get the dimensions in their previous values, but after the scale command, it's in the new values. So it's probably going to be a bit confusing for you, but if that's the only remedy you have instead of recreating the model, then yeah, of course, go for it.
Yeah, actually, while taking the exam, I also used to do that same. So I forget to change the dimensions. Like sometimes the questions will be in inches, and sometimes it will be in the MMG, right, MMG format. So the thing is, you need to be careful on that and be sure to change that in the initial step. Else, as Yahya said, it will be difficult for you to change the value, because it doesn't change the value, convert the value. It will be like changing the value. If it is a 10-inch, the value will be changing to 10 mm. It will not be changing that in inch to mm, right?
Yeah, and another thing is you can go ahead and create the model in a certain unit system, but when you're extracting info, you can extract the info in a different unit system, and in this case, it's going to do a conversion for you. So as I said, in the measure tool, you can and even in the mass properties, you can change the number of decimal places or even change the unit system. In this case, yes, it is going to convert the value for you. So let's say 1 centimeter is going to be like 2.54 inches or whatever it is, or the other way around, I believe. 1 inch is 2.54 centimeters. But in that case, yes, in the measure tool. But when we're talking about the whole template, no, it just doesn't do any conversion. It just changes the value.
Yeah.
I see some questions in the chat as well. So someone here is asking about SOLIDWORKS certification, but the simulation preparation. Unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to help you out with that because I'm not really a simulation kind of guy. Most of my needs with SOLIDWORKS simulation are done with Simulation Express. So I don't really use like SOLIDWORKS simulation as a separate software. And I also don't have a license for that. I only have a license as an education license for SOLIDWORKS. There's also a question here that asks about resources for learning theory. So theory, when we talk about like knowledge about like not practical knowledge, but now we're talking about like theoretical knowledge, this is really going to come back to your engineering principles that you've learned, whether it's like by trade or in your studies. And you won't need anything more of the basis of CAD for the CSWA exam. It's not really made for anything higher than that. As I said, this is an exam at the very beginning. It's just for students and beginners for the software. So there is not high level of expectance from those users to know stuff that is out of the scope of the exam. So, for example, it's not going to ask you about things like types of welds, or for example, the case factor of something. It's only going to ask you about things that are related to your design. So you might start searching for things like design intent and how to work on perfecting your design intent. And there are tons of topics that are related to just like perfecting your design. Let's say adding shortcuts to your workflow, whether it's like keyboard shortcuts or mouse gestures, maybe changing the UI a bit. Those kinds of things, they just speed you along the way of creating the model. But the way you create the model, it's at the very end going to come down to if you know what the features you're going to use are going to be suitable or not, and if you know how they should be used and the different cases when you should use them, which one will give you a more robust model at the very end.
Yeah, actually, like
there's also a question here from Ahmed. Yeah, what were you saying, Krishna?
Yeah,
Go
like
ahead.
for that 1 minute. Yeah, for that theory-based question, like CSW mechanical design is all about the design. So you will be working completely on the software, and you will be like providing the values, like the mass properties, the variation in the length, or like this angles maybe. So the questions will be like that, and I think the theory questions will be like the initially you said, right, the section view or else like the drawing views, right? So that will be some questions, I guess, but I'm not sure about it. I forgot. And it took me 2 years to, before 2 years, I have done the exam. So I'm not sure about it. But for the CSWA mechanical design, you won't be requiring the theoretical questions. And the exams like additive manufacturing and similar to that, like electrical sustainability, would require those kind of materials.
Yeah, that's right. And by the way, yeah, I do confirm that the exam hasn't changed during the last 2 years. Don't worry. So there's another question here from Ahmed. He's saying that he's got a voucher for the CSWA, but he's not sure whether is his level the correct level to take the exam or not. Is it safe for him to give it a shot? And in your case, I'm going to refer to the second, third, and last resources that I sent. So just check out the sample exam, solve that, and see whether you get like a full mark or maybe what kind of score do you get in that exam. If you find any difficulties in that exam, that should be an indicator to like work on certain parts of your workflow before attempting to sit for the full exam or the real exam. You can also check the list of commands that are in the exam. So as I said at the very beginning, if you go to the main web page of SolidWorks certifications and go to the web page that's for the CSWA mechanical design, you're gonna find a list of all the commands and all the features that may be covered in the SolidWorks exam, because as you guys know, it's not one exam for everyone. The exam questions change from one person to another. It's always randomized so that people don't cheat and stuff like that. But the overall level and the overall topics that you may face are the same. So just to make it fair for everyone. And in that case, you can see those. And if you just go through the list, if there's anything in that list that you're not familiar with, so for example, if it tells you that you need to have knowledge about coordinate systems and you've never created a coordinate system before, all you have to do is just go and search for coordinate systems, learn what they're used for, learn how to use them, and try that out with yourself in the software and stuff like that. So just make sure that you're knowledgeable about the main commands that the software is going to test you in the exam, and also make sure you practice. So as I said, there are tons of practice models starting with the sample exam, but also practice models that I sent to just go through and create for yourself, and they should tell you whether your level is on par with the exam or not. If you find a great difficulty in creating them, then maybe you should work a bit more on your skills. If not, and they are easy peasy for you, then in that case, if I were you, I would take a shot for the exam, especially since you already have a free voucher, so you didn't pay any money for that. But as I said, in both cases, make sure you have the right preparation, and after that, just take a go.
Yeah, actually, what?
So I've also got a couple of questions about different exams. So in that case, let's just stick to mechanical design in this session. But feel free to just send me on LinkedIn your question about other resources for like simulation or additive manufacturing and stuff like that. As I said, simulation is not really my kind of thing, but additive manufacturing, yeah, I can help with that. So feel free to reach out to me for that. There's also another question here that's so yeah, tools within the software that you should know. So as I said, let me just show it to you in here back once again. So just give me a sec. If you open the, you know what? Let's go through it with each other. So let me just resume my sharing. So just go to solidworks.com/certification. And from here, you're going to find like the certification program for SolidWorks. And now all you have to do is just go down and go to the CSWA. So here it is in mechanical design. Go to the exam info page. And this is the web page that I sent the link to in the chat a while ago. And all you have to do is just go down here, and here, this about the exam section. This is where you must focus. So make sure you know how to use these sketch entities, these sketch tools, and so on. And go through this list and make sure you know how to use every one of them. Because anything, any command, any feature in this list may show up in the exam. And it's not going to show up in a direct way. it's probably going to be a model that needs one of these features or commands to be used in order for you to create it in a correct way or in an easy way or in a fast way, whatever it is. And it's not going to be explicit. It's not going to tell you, you must use this trim tool or this offset entities command or anything. It's just going to tell you, create this model, and you're just going to know how to use the different commands inside of SolidWorks to put them to use while creating the model or making any modification it asks you about. So it's not going to be explicit. It's not going to tell you, you must use this. So that's why I'm telling you the most important thing is practice, not just having knowledge about the different commands. Because I might just open the manual for SolidWorks or go to like help.solidworks.com and go through everything and read every single option in every single command and read about everything. But if I don't have practical knowledge to back that up, I'm not going to be able to solve even an exam as the CSWA, because after all, it's just a practical hands-on exam. It tests my ability to create models and to change them, and it measures my design intent level and if I've got that master or not and stuff like that. So if I don't have that in mind and if I don't have that practiced beforehand, it's not going to make me any use to or any difference if I have tons of knowledge without real experience.
Yeah, actually, for Ahmad Adil, so you told right you are not sure about whether you can complete the exam within the stipulated time, and you know what I'm planning to have a practice session where we will be conversing and we will be clearing all the doubts and like we can practice as well. I will show you how quick you can design and make you understand how it will be. So it will be conducted in both English and maybe probably in the latest like the language Tamil. So here many as it is a Chennai zone, so most people are from Tamil, and we can also do that also in English and in Tamil. We are planning to do that as well.
So I think we've got all the questions answered. So as I said, if anyone has another question for me, and if we didn't get to answer your question in this session, feel free to just scan the QR code. And you know what? I'm just gonna send you my LinkedIn profile link in the chat as well. Just send me a message. As I said, anyone can send me at any time. You don't have to be a connection. I've got an open profile. So just go ahead and ask me whatever it is that you want, and whether it's resources, whether it's like a problem that you face or an issue that you encountered, and I'm going to do the best to help you all out and answer any questions I get. Other than that, it was a great pleasure to be with you today, and I hope all of you get to sit for the exam. And so we've got like a bit over 20 people in this session right now. So in this case, I'm expecting to see 20 more CSWAs, let's say by the end of the year, for example. It's going to be a great thing, of course.
Yeah, thank you so much, Yahya. So actually, she has planned to attend the conduct the session in between of his exams, and thank you so much for that. And I hope that everyone who have ever attended the session will be clear of how the exam will be and how the questions will be, and what are the tips and tricks we can and where we can find the resources and everything. So this will make you clear on how we can crack the exam, and we can also plan some similar events like this for the with the session. So, is there any other questions, or like maybe we can close the session? Is there any other thing, Yashya, you want to share?
Well, yeah, everything is in the resources I sent to you guys in the links. Just go through them, as I said, and check them all out. And if you've got any questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. Other than that, that's all for today. Hope you had a great session. Hope you liked it, and hope it's very informative, fun, most importantly, and helpful to you.
Thank you, Yashya. So thank you so much, and thanks for everyone who have ever attended the session. And we will be posting the same recordings in the YouTube soon. So don't worry, we will also be sharing in the WhatsApp group. So make sure you have joined the group so that you won't miss out any of these links and any updates from us.
Perfect. So with that being said, see you guys.
Bye. Bye, everyone.